Alright, so where we left off on our app last time was basically getting the layout. And so in this video, I want to get to a MVP, or a minimal viable product, something that at least just tells you if you're right or wrong. And then I think in the final video, we'll just do some cleanup and really just some refactoring to make things a little bit cleaner. So first, I'm going to get rid of some of this extraneous code here. We don't need a background image. You are more than welcome to put in a background image. But for purposes of this exercise, I'm not going to leave that in. Next, we obviously have I've hard-coded some of this data in here, but ideally, obviously we want to make this more dynamic than me just hard-coding the number 1 in here, right? The other thing I noticed is that the system name here will change repeatedly, so I'll probably need to add this in as one of the attributes that I want to store within my options of choices. And finally, the background being red, that is also something I will probably want to store. So let's go ahead and fix our model to make it more appropriate. And I do want to make a couple changes in here since our last video. So first of all, I don't think I'm going to have this answer variable anymore. All I'm going to do is I'm going to have one of the choices be correct, being true, and then we'll just compare on that and make sure it's true. All right, so I'm going to take out the answers. We don't really need that. The other thing I wanted to modify is just this struct name. I know I called it quiz choices. It really should be quiz choice because each item is a choice, and then you get an array of choices. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to modify these to just change this. Probably would have been easier if I just did a refactor. Then I wouldn't have to hit backspace so many times, but just for clarity's sake, we'll do it that way. Next is I do want to, we talked about that system image, right? So I'm going to have a system image that I want to use, and we're going to have this as like a square, diamond, etc. We can also probably randomize it, just a couple different images, or do a count, and if it's like the first one, it's always a diamond, it's always a square, things like that. But maybe you want to be creative with your images, so I'm going to leave that as part of something that we're going to have as one of the choices. The next thing is this choice ID, right? So I don't think I'm going to need this because I'm not putting in the letter A, B, or C. So I'm going to take out this quiz choice ID. I'm just going to really have the name of the choice text there. It is selected. I'm not sure I'm going to use this. Originally I was thinking that someone clicks on it, it would mark it as true, and then I would compare it to whatever the answer was up here. But I think what I'm just going to do this time is just say if it's correct, it's correct. So I'm going to take out the that is selected portion right now. The one other thing that I wanted to add in is that variable for the background color. It's going to be a color, right? Because we want, this might be like a red or orange, etc. And again, I could have done this in such a way that every loop is a different color, but let's do it this way. All right, so can't find color in scope, probably because I don't have SwiftUI imported, so I'll just go ahead and do import SwiftUI. UI. And then down here, since I've changed my model all over the place, this is not going to be accurate. So let's get rid of answer. It's not a choice we need. Let's get rid of this. And we don't need the choice IDs anymore. But we did add in system image and background color. So let's make sure that we do that correctly. So we're going to delete all of these. And we're going to have a system. I'll put a space here so it comes up system image, background color, and choice text. So I can take out this part for the choice text since we already have it. And we're going to do a string here, and we are going to call it, let me think about it. Let's do square. I think square was the first one, dot fill. Then we'll just do, I'm just going to make this, this will be, we'll make the first one red. And then I'm just going to copy this portion here and fill out the rest. And I'm going to probably speed up the video at this point so you don't have to watch me type in each one of these choices over and over. Okay, so I've updated this, and the last thing is I'm going to make this is correct, also the is correct value. So I think for this one, is correct is true. The answer is that Alaska is the wild turkey. Oh, sorry, wild turkeys don't live everywhere except Alaska. And then a male turkey is called a tom. So this will be the correct answer as well. All right. So now you can see how this quiz model is taking effect, and let me just move this over a little bit. Hope I can do this, just to get everything in the screen a little bit better. And again, I don't really like putting the quiz model in the actual model. This should really just define our model. So I'll probably move this into a view model a little bit later, maybe now. We'll see. Let's see what else we have to do. All right, so into the content view. Now we should, everything should still basically be the same, except for this part, we'll fill in with that name of the image and everything like that. So what I want to do here now is I want to, we'll go ahead and create that view model. I think it'll make things a little bit easier once I have that in place. So I'm going to go ahead and just right click on this. I'm going to make a new group. I'm going to call these views. And then this will be my models. So again, just right clicking on quiz model, new group for selection, and I'm going to call it model. And I'm going to create let's create a new file, and then I'll just add it in. So we'll just do a new file. So I'm going to right click, new file. This is going to be just a Swift file because it's going to be a view model. And I'm going to call it we'll call it game. I don't know what to call it. Quiz engine VM. All right, we'll call it quiz engine view model. And so this will hopefully be the brains behind all of our view models and things like that. So let me go ahead and create that. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I want to do. No, let's do that. And then we'll do a new group from the selection. We'll call this view models. All right. So we have this. It's got nothing in it. And let's go ahead and just start doing what we need to do to create a view model. For those of you that don't know how to do a view model, there's a lot of great tutorials out there, but the thought is that a view model will contain kind of the logic and like the brains behind everything. Like it does all the computations, and your views will just show the information. Ideally, you wouldn't have any like comparisons or anything like that in your views. But again, this is your app. You can do whatever you want with it. So let's go ahead and create this view model. So in order to create a view model, what you're basically doing is you're creating a class, and you're going to call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it quiz engine VM, and it's going to have to conform to an observable object because you're going to reference it from your content view, right? So we'll just do that for now. And there's a couple things I think we're going to need in our view model. So for example, we won't use it now maybe, but we're going to need a current question. What question do we start with, right? And as you know, arrays always start with 0. So our first thing will be a 0. I'm going to hit build real quick just to make sure everything's working. All right. And the other thing we probably want is we're probably going to have a function, and I'm just going to kind of put a stub in here, but we want to advance the questions, right? Next question, right? This will be a function here. Add code to advance to next question. We'll probably have a couple other things there, but let's keep it. Let's start doing what we need to do to get everything in here. The other thing I wanted to do is, like I mentioned, is I don't really like keeping the and again, this is personal preference. You can do whatever you want. This is yours. I usually like to take the actual data and put it into a quiz engine or into the view model. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop this into the view model. So I just cut everything I did out of this particular variable, and I'm going to put it right in here. And I can't just drop it in here like this. I mean, I guess I could, but usually you want to do an extension. So we can do an extension of the quiz engine. This way I don't have this variable just cluttering up everything up here, because this will probably get pretty long. Like I'm thinking there'll probably be like a function, all done, right? And this might return a Boolean that if, for at the last question, if at last question, then all done, right? Something like that. So return. So for now, we return false. But we're probably gonna have a couple functions in here. We'll probably have to do some work in here. So we'll drop in an extension over here. So just separate from it. And then, of course, if you wanted to mark it, you could do a mark. And I don't have a shortcut for this, but extension, something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an extension, and I'm going to I'm missing a curly brace here, so everything's been modified, and then I think that's all I really need. We'll make this a static variable in the extension. And I think that's really it, right, to move it into our view model. So now we have to actually initialize our view model. So let's call it from over here. So up here, we're going to want to so now these all break because I have to define that view model up here. So we're going to define the observable object as a variable, and I'll call it view model quiz engine VM, right? So now we've defined our observable object, which is why, if you recall, I made this an observable object over here. And what we'll do is I want to initialize this to kind of the first item, and I want to maybe create a quiz, right? So I want to create a quiz, and I want to initialize it to the first option, excuse me. So what we can do is we can actually do a static function. You know what, let me do this. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to have a published variable called model, and in this model I'm going to have my quiz engine, and I'm going to create my quiz. It doesn't exist, but I'm going to have it somewhere in here, and I want to pass it the current question. Okay, so what's going to happen is hopefully next question, right, I'm going to have to do something like current question plus equals 1, and I'm going to increment the questions. I'm going to have to add some logic, right? Logic. I'll comment that out. Add some logic to make sure we don't go over. So there's a little bit of something here that we'll have to do. Okay, I will fix this a little bit later, but you kind of get the idea. I can't actually reference this directly because I have to call it from the quiz engine, I believe. Something like this. Okay, so I haven't initialized my quiz engine, but let's do this. So the problem here is I have no member called create quiz engine, so let's go ahead and create that function. Static function create quiz engine and this will be basically like what number it is, and then we're going to return a type of quiz, which I haven't defined yet in my struct, so we'll do that in a minute. And what I want to do is return quiz with the current. This is actually, you know what, let me create the model first, otherwise this is not going to make much sense. So let me go ahead and go ahead to the quiz model, and we're going to create an additional struct here. We're going to call it quiz, and you don't necessarily have to do this, but the fun thing about this is you can add additional variables to this if you wanted to kind of make this more fancy or expand it and things like that. So I think I'm going to have in this quiz, I'm going to have a total score probably somewhere that I'm going to store here, and that way we can show a total score at the very end. But that's not going to be till probably the next video. So we're going to track what current question we are, and we're going to kind of instantiate this quiz model that we talked about. So again, we can do other variables like, and I want to comment this out for now, but variable like total score, and it's going to probably be 0 to initialize it, but then you add up the score, and if you reset it, we'll reset the total score. So you can kind of keep other variables in here, other fun things in here as well. All right, so let's see. So let's go back to our view model. So again, just going back to our view model to kind of talk through what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to return a type of quiz and creating a new quiz, passing this current question index that I added. All right, so I'm gonna create this quiz with those two variables that you saw here, right? The current question index and quiz model. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna pass in this I, basically, which is so again, right? So starting here, I'm creating a model, publishing a model. I'm going to call this function to create a quiz engine, and I'm passing in the current question. And then when I pass in this current question, that this index will go here, so that I have access to this current question index, and I'm going to create a quiz model based on the kind of quiz data and the index it's on. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, try to explain it one more time later. But the basic idea is that I want to create this model, creates this quiz engine, which is a struct of type quiz with two variables, and hopefully that will work. Let me go back to my content view. So let's see if I can, so in here I've created my unknown attribute observable object. So I'm not sure, oh, okay, because I did observable. So observable object, in here I'm going to observe the object. So a little bit confusing, but one is the object you're observing and one is the observed object. I'm probably not explaining it real well, but the one we want here is the observed object. So I've created my view model with the quiz engine VM. All right, so let's start filling in some of these pieces here. All right, so for example, this text right here, this is going to be the question. So what we're going to do is, so we've instantiated our view model. So we're going to call our view model, and then remember we created in here this model, right? And in this model, we've created the engine with the quiz, with all of the quiz data that's down here, right? So the quiz data is this right here. All right? So let's do this. So let's go to, my content view. So we're going to be calling our view model, the model, and we're going to call it the quiz model here, right? So you can kind of see how the structure works, right? So this is my view model, VM. I assigned it, then model, then quiz data, then I'm going to look for the question. So we'll go back over here, quiz model dot question, right over here. Take that out. VM dot model dot quiz model dot question image. Okay, so we have all of that. Now this is going to break because this doesn't make sense. But this whole section really doesn't make sense, right? I mean, I'm basically doing this 4 times. Really should be a loop. So let's go ahead and do a lazy vgrid, and we're just going to create a loop. Lazy vgrid. And we're going to have a number of columns. and the number of columns will be a grid item. So we have to define this. Now, gosh, the easiest, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this, but what we can do is let's just define it up here as a variable. I think later on I'm going to pull this whole thing out into a separate view so I don't have too many extraneous variables up here, but let's just take a look at, let's just create a grid item. So we're looking at grid item, right? A description of a row or column in a lazy grid, and it's going to be an array. Going to repeat itself, and we will do a grid item. So we'll do fixed, and this is, we're going to do like, let's do 170 width and no spacing, and we'll have 2 columns. Are my parentheses right? Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so I could also just take this part out and I could just drop it kind of right in here as well. But that's not particularly clean, so what we'll do here is we'll just keep that up there. Again, I might move this to a different view. I'm not sure yet. We'll determine it as we go through it. So, all right, so we got a lazy V-grid columns, and let's just go ahead and, let's go ahead and open this up by hitting enter or double clicking. All right, so in our lazy V-grid, I'm going to actually just drop, I actually can't drop this in here. So let's do a for each, because we're really doing a for each, right? We're going to do for each VM model. Remember, we have our model, we have our quiz model. Let's go back to our quiz model real quick. So within our quiz model, we're going to have a choice list, and that's an array of quiz choices. And we basically want to iterate through all these quiz choices to show something. So let's do this. Quiz model dot quiz question. Oh, sorry. Quiz model dot choice list. Right. Those are a list of choices. And we want to iterate through all of this. Right. So for each, we're going to do like choice in, and we're going to just copy and paste one of these up here. And actually, the more I think about it, I'm not 100% sure I can use a button, but we will cross that bridge when it comes. All right, so the text is going to be, again, we're going to, so now we have a choice here, right? We're iterating through this choice list. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say image system name, but instead of this hard coding this in here, what we're going to say is it's going to be a choice dot, let's see, dot, it's not giving me system image is what I think I called it, right? Now it should have popped up with system image is what I called it. So let me hit the build to see if I can get this to work. Okay, so this is okay errors. Choice dot system image, and then instead of just hard coding this, I'm going to do choice dot I'm wondering why it's not bringing up my list. Anyway, I think it's called choice text. I think that's what I call it. So I was expecting it to bring up, and maybe it's because I have some other error. Okay. Okay. All right. So I guess we can. Let me just fix this real quick. So it's looking. Again, because it's not loading, the reason it's not loading is because up here I've asked for an observable object called VM view model. So what we're going to do is just write the view model, and we'll just call it quiz engine VM, right? And we could do the same thing for over here. VM quiz engine VM. All right. So let's see, missing parameter. Oh yeah, I thought I fixed that. Okay, let me go back to this. All right, so okay, so again, this looks like it's working. This little for each here, and then with my background color, right? Remember, I added it as a choice dot. Ah, there we go. So it finally showed up. I'm not sure why up here it wasn't giving me my options, but background color, right? So we have our image. That looks all right. We might need to tweak some of this. All right, so I think I'm done with this part, right? I can delete all of this. I don't need these repetitive buttons over and over. And hopefully I don't delete too much. Delete. Okay, it does look like my curly braces are intact and in order. Hate curly braces. All right, and that looks off, but hopefully it's not doing anything. Let's go ahead and build this. Okay, so referencing initializer on fetch requires quiz choice conform to identifiable. Okay, so we did not have, so in our model, I did not have quiz, didn't it say quiz model? Or quiz, no, it has to be quiz choice, right? What was the error? For each quiz choice, yeah, so let's just go over here. So very easy, identifiable. So in order for it to be identifiable, though, it needs to have some sort of ID. So this will probably give me some weird error. And yep, does not conform to protocol identifiable because it needs some sort of ID. So what I like to do usually is just drop an ID in here, and I'll make it a UUID. So that way it's identifiable, but I don't have to worry about actually assigning it any particular number. All right, so let's see what we have so far. Build it. And all right, so we gotta fix this. Let's just make this like 170 for now, see what that looks like. All right, cool. So we kind of have everything laid out. Let's make sure we get these buttons to work. And the buttons are a little bit close together, so one thing I will do is just add a little bit of spacing, and let's make it like 30. Let's see what it looks like. Added the spacing down there. Let's make the width like 160. Just trying to add a little bit of space around here. Let's lazy V grid to give it a little bit more, allow people to click on a little bit better. 20 is fine. All right. So the next thing we'll do is I want to make sure that we actually are able to get a feedback on whether or not you have the right answer. And typically I'd use probably, so I'm thinking through it, probably something in my view model to determine whether or not it's correct. But the basic thought here is that we will drive this to a destination. So let's just create that new page, some sort of like answer feedback page. So let's do a new file, and I will call it result. Oops. So it's going to be a SwiftUI view, and we'll call it like result view. So the idea is that once they make select an answer, this result view will tell them what if they got it right or wrong. So at the beginning of everything, because we're using a view model, you do want to pass that view model around so we have it here. I don't know if we'll need it, but I would like to at least import it. And I did not mean to hit period. It's supposed to be a colon. And I think the idea, just as I'm thinking through it, we're going to have some sort of, I'm just going to do placeholder text for now. So something like a VStack, and all we're going to say is, if is correct, because we're going to pass this is correct choice around. So let's see what happens here. If is correct, then we'll just do text. You got it right, and then else. Text, better luck next time. And I'm not thinking about doing anything beyond just you got it right or you didn't get it right, but we could potentially also have some sort of feedback, like for example, the first question, if you pick Alaska, yes, Alaska is correct. But if you pick something else, you could say, there are 10,000 turkeys in Kentucky or something like that. But for now, let's keep it like this. So is correct. I'm going to pass it in as a variable, as a Boolean. And my thought is that I'll pass this in because in the actual content view over here, I have access in this choice list for each choice. I have access to whether or not it is the correct answer. As you recall, in my model down here, I tell it which one is correct, right? Every one of these defaults to false, except for the one that I say is true. So let's try that. And correct Boolean. And then additionally, what we'll do down here is we will say if, we'll bring up our view model, if all done, right? So I don't know if you remember this method I created here, but all done, we will then say text. Congrats, you are done with the quiz. We'll also add, some sort of progress meter so you can tell you how many questions you got right. You got X questions right, something like that. And we'll figure, we'll do that part probably in another video, the last video. So else, I actually want to navigate back to the content view with the next question. All right. So down here, in order to actually view it, we need to pass in the view model and whether or not the result is correct. For now, I'll just comment this out, but you can easily just pass in the view model and just make the is correct, true or false. And actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it. I don't have to VM quiz engine VM, and we'll pass is correct as false for now. So we will get hopefully this text here, right here. All right, so now we have to go back. We have a couple things we need to do, which is we have to finish producing this function, which we never did. So let's go back to this thing, and we will go over here. Oh, actually, you know what? Let's actually just write some of this out. So what we'll do is let's do an all done. So what we'll say is, so sorry, I'm thinking through this. So probably we're also going to want a function called current question, because eventually I wanted to give them a status that says you are on question 1 of 15. So this will return an int, and we'll just return quiz engine VM dot current question, which, if you recall, is this question that's going to increment, right? This question that's going to increment, and we'll just say +1. And the reason we're going to do that is because, as you recall, array started with 0. So if we're on question number 1, the current question is actually going to be at 0. So that's why I'm adding that 1 to this. Next, we'll have, let's say, function total questions. And the reason I'm going to have this is eventually I'm going to do, a progress turn. So this is going to be quiz engine dot quiz data dot count. So basically, it's going to do a count of the number of items in this quiz data, which is an array of quiz model. And of course, there's 2 arrays. So this is also going to be an int. Right. So then in all done, what I can do is if current question is equal to total questions, then we're going to just basically return true. And if else, we're going to return false, right? Did I miss a curly brace somewhere? Oh, right there, of course. There we go. So that's the basic idea. So if we're the current question is equal to total questions, then it'll return true. We're all done. There's no more questions after that. Otherwise, we'll return false. And one thing to be aware of is when you get, if you start incrementing this this current question, we have to make sure eventually that we add some logic so we don't go over. Because if you do call, the content view with an array out of bounds, it will crash your application. So we can work on that a little bit later. But now I have all of these. So what I'm thinking here is else Yeah, so now we have better luck next time. And right now we're not all done. So anyway, what we're going to do is let's go back to our content view. And actually, I don't think I'm going to use a button here because I want to drive to a different page. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually use a navigation view or navigation link. So let's just change this to navigation link. And what I'll do is have a destination. And we already have a label down here, so I don't need this part. I'm just going to delete this label portion here. But I do need the destination. And the destination is going to be something like, let's see if I do this right. It's going to be the result view, right? So let's result view, and I want to be able to insert both the view model, which is the view model we've been passing around all over the place, and we have each of the choices. So I'm going to pass choice dot is correct. So the idea here is, I have an extra curly brace, I believe. Okay. No, I don't. That's, I need to, I think, remove this one. There we go. All right, here we go. So this, I think, should work. So the idea here is we're going to navigate to the destination, which is this result view. We're going to pass VM, and if it's correct. So if the choice is true, we're going to pass that true to this view. Now, generally, I don't like doing this outside of a view model because now if I write any test scripts, I'm going to have a really hard time testing this. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I think it'll be fine. So if it's correct, then we'll have the text, you got it correct, and probably we'll add some logic to like add to the total number correct, and then and that way you can keep track of how many you got correct. Else we'll just do better luck next time, right? So then over here, if we're all done, then it'll say congrats, you're done with the quiz, you got some question right. We'll get a, probably add this or whatever function we get produced for that. We'll put it over here. Otherwise, we'll navigate back to the content view. And when we navigate back to the content view, what I want to do is I want to do a navigation link again, and the destination again will be content view. And I'm going to pass again back my view model. And what we'll do here is we need to run a function, right? And I want to increment the increment basically the next question. So what we'll do here is here will be text. We'll have some text here that says click for the next question. And what we'll also do here is I want to do an onAppear. So we'll do an onAppear. We're going to basically call the function. So vm.nextQuestion. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Basically what I'm trying to do here is, it's in one line, is go back to the content view, but when it appears, we're going to do increment the question. And then when they click on that, when it goes back, it will have incremented the question here in the view model. And then when you go back to the content view, it will actually pull down the next question. So hopefully this works correctly. Let's see what happens. I didn't do a navigation stack. Let's see what happens if I just run this. All right, so let's click on Florida. Yeah, nothing will happen because I didn't put this in a navigation stack. So let's go ahead and just drop this whole thing in a navigation stack, and then we'll see if that works. And then after this, if this works, I'm going to do a different video to kind of clean up a lot of this code. Let's do a navigation stack, and then I will put a curly brace somewhere down here. it'll indent it. So hopefully that works. And then in our result view, I also need a navigation stack. And hopefully if I put a curly brace somewhere, it'll fix my indent. Now let's take a look at this, see if it runs correctly. All right, so Florida. Nope, better luck next time. So I didn't get that right. Click for next question. So something's wrong with my incrementing. It didn't actually increment, but it did. I did get that one right, and it did somehow count that I'm done with the quiz. So let's go back and take a look at what I did incorrectly. So probably what I didn't do correctly is I didn't actually recreate the model with the right with this next question, right? So I incremented current question, but then I got to rebuild this model with the correct question. So let's go back and let's take a look and see what we need to do. So, maybe we should do something like if quiz, just for the protection, right? Quiz engine VM dot current question is less than quiz engine VM dot quiz data dot count. And I guess I probably could have just done total questions as well. I guess I could have done that as well, but let me go with this for now, and we can always make a change later. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna update this model, right? So when we started this model, this I was 0, right? We've passed in that 0. Here, we've incremented this to be +1. So we want to recreate this model with the new number. So, and this time this will be the quiz engine dot current question. All right. Else nothing, I guess. Else we can just do a debug statement here. Print no more questions. This will be out to the console. So we've incremented the current question. Check to make sure we don't go over, and then we will recreate the model with this new question number. So let's give this a shot. And if this works, I think we'll stop the video here, and I'll do some cleanup in the final video. All right, so Florida. No, better luck next time. Click for the next question. So it didn't increment to the next question. So what is a male turkey called? It's called a tom. You got it right. Congratulations, you're done with the quiz. And then we'll probably have to do a restart button here. One thing I do want to change is this back button here, because there's no way we're going to be able to, if they click back and click next, it's just going to mess up our counter. So one thing we can do is just go into our navigation view. And actually, because I have a navigation stack, maybe I'll bring this title up as well. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I think it's here. This is the hard part about trying to figure out exactly where these go. So I'm trying to make sure this lines up. I think it's right here. So navigation title, let's do wild turkey quiz. And then we're actually going to do navigation back bar button hidden. And we're going to make this true. All right. So let's see if this preview updates correctly, or if I put it in the right spot. All right. So I have the quiz up there. Maybe I'll do a progress here instead. So let's just delete this text. We don't need this anymore. And then also in our result view, I'd like to drop in here the same thing. We want to hide that navigation back bar. So I think that lines up. Navigation back bar hidden. We'll just make that true. All right. Now let's take a look at this, and if this looks good, I think I'll stop here. Final video, I'll do some cleanup and just trying to make things a little bit more readable. So wild turkeys live in every U.S. state except, let's say, Alaska. You got it right. Next question. So no more back bar, you can see. What's a male turkey called? Gander. Better luck next time. So you're done with the quiz. You got next questions right. All right. So right now you kind of have a functioning quiz for the most part. We'll just kind of do the cleanup and add more status text like, you're on question 5 of 10. And then I want to do that timer so that the quicker you answer the question correctly, the more points you get. And we'll be done after that. And we'll do that all in the view model. Thanks, everyone.